Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining our Market Insights Poland session. We're here with Magda from Music Alley, Bartek from Borowka Music, and Marcin from a lot of labels. We will make a little introduction round in a second. We're having the Market Insight sessions to give people access to new markets with a little bit of connections from each region. This is going to be about Poland, and let's make a little introduction round, starting with Magda.
Hello, everyone. My name is Magda, and I work for Music Alley, where we basically gather insights from the music industry from worldwide. And we have a lot of resources. You might know us from our newsletter or from our country reports or from our quarterly reports, where we just gather and share the most up-to-date data about the music industry. And I also have experience of working in music distribution here in Poland. So yeah, I guess I'm here to just share some insights.
Thanks, Magda. Bartek, maybe you can quickly say hello and say what you're doing.
Hello, guys. Can you hear me now? Okay. I'm holding a small booking agency called Borowka Music, and we are focused on small shows, small concerts. That's our main thing. We organize them since 15 years and organized over 4,000 of them. And yeah, we don't do big productions. That's not even my goal, to become a company which will make bigger events. We're focused on small things, and I can say we're experts in this in Poland. And we do a lot of mostly alternative music, pretty much singer-songwriters, some Americana, alternative folk, country, this kind of stuff. And yeah, that's our main goal, main job, and it's pretty intensive. Half of a year is after us, because we did I don't know, over 200 shows since the gigs became legal again in Poland in the end of May. So sorry for being tired, but I'm on tour all the time, and yeah. Nice to meet you guys.
Thanks for joining. Marcin, maybe a few words about what you've been doing in the last 20 years.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marcin Grośkiewicz. I run a label, a couple of labels. The most famous is Me Records, and it's multi-genre indie label focusing mostly on electronic music. My background is from hip-hop because I started in 2002 releasing vinyl records with Polish hip-hop, and I'm still from time to time releasing hip-hop, so I consider myself quite an expert in vinyl thing, because I already made more than 100 releases in my career, so it's quite a lot, I think. And yes, I'm also a DJ from time to time. I used to be a manager, but the main thing is running indie labels in Poland. Me Records. Okay. So great to be here.
Thank you. We'll dive into Poland with a quick overview. We'll have a little Q&A session later, but I would like to give the people a quick overview of the market. Magda, maybe you can give us a quick rough overview, specifically like for streaming, what's the numbers, and also your experience from Music Alley, but also with independent distribution.
Yes. So I guess I'm gonna start from like the whole thing. So the whole market size, the whole market revenue in 2020 was 114 million. And basically, the revenue has been growing for a while, for a couple of years, since the streaming era kind of picked up and started taking the industry a little bit out from the hole that it has been. So yeah, $114 million, I have to say. Between 2019 and 2020, the growth has stopped a little bit, has slowed down actually, it hasn't stopped. But I think we all know the reason for that, because the revenue includes both recording music and live music and synchronization and royalties and everything. In general, Poland is the 23rd biggest market, music market in the whole world. And I think what's very important to mention is that even though streaming has been on the rise, physical music is still very, physical products are still very important and are holding a significant kind of share of the revenue. So the revenue from streaming in 2020 accumulated for 44% of the whole revenue, but for the physical, it was 37%. So not really that far of a difference. And actually the 2020 was the first year when the digital revenues exceeded physical revenues. Up to 2020, the physical revenues were still the most lucrative for Poland. What else? To compare kind of the music markets from our side of Europe, we are basically kind of the biggest one, because, for example, Czech Republic, they have a music, they're the second biggest, and Turkey, but they're a little bit further. So Czech Republic's revenues are around $50 million in 2020. Hungary was 33 million, Greece was 32 million. So if you look at the numbers, Poland is, significantly the biggest music market within the Eastern and Central Europe, obviously excluding Russia, but that's a whole, different story. Yeah, that's the rough revenue when it comes to numbers, I guess.
Thank you. So you would say people focusing on Poland is Polish people, or would you say what's the share between the regional music and the foreign music? Because that's for foreign markets quite interesting, how to get into the Polish market, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. So I think Poland consumes a lot of Polish music, especially Polish hip hop. Basically, I think that's a similar trend with Germany as well, that hip hop has been on just topping all of the streaming charts, YouTube charts, everything. And in Poland, it's mostly Polish hip hop. So I actually did some research, and I checked that in Spotify's top 50 list from last week, 80% of the list was Polish and 65% of it was Polish hip hop. However, just because this is a dominating genre right now, it doesn't mean that there's no other options. For example, radios are still big in Poland as well when it comes to music consumption, and they don't actually really play that much hip hop. However, they do play Polish music as well. We have this rule that they have that 1/3 of the music played in the radio has to be actually Polish. Yeah, definitely Poland consumes a lot of Polish music, but I still, I see a lot of room for growth. We have a really great rising electronic music scene. We have a huge jazz scene, and even I think within hip hop there's some space for collaboration. So when it comes to Poland, being being on the inside, I see it growing a lot, and I still see a lot of room to explore and to kind of try new things that haven't been tried yet.
Thank you, Magda. Maybe also Marcin, you have something to add. What's your sense on the radio side? Also, is that relevant? Foreign music?
Radio is very tricky in Poland because, of course, there are some main stations, national stations, which are I just even looked up on the data recently, and when you're comparing the sales and when you are checking what's the biggest or maybe the biggest artists who are selling the most, they are not on the radio. As Magda mentioned, Polish hip hop is something which is on the top of the sales, and you cannot find it on the radios. So that will show you how the radio looks like. In my opinion, there are very strong university radios or students radios all over Poland. They are mainly works locally, but they are very strong and they are the kind of a taste makers around youth. Like in Warsaw, for example, there is Radio Campus, which is very strong. Yes, radio is very tricky. It's very hard to get there. And even if somebody from abroad will somehow get on the playlists, it doesn't mean that there will be invitations for concerts or etc. So as I said, it's a bit complicated, and probably it's not the best way to get to Poland through the radio in that moment.
I think that's very classical in a lot of markets. The radio comes along the way, but as you mentioned playlisting, Magda, maybe you can give us a quick overview on the distribution side. How is there any specific platforms that people need to know for Poland, or is it just the classical players, and how is playlisting working for the major music but also for niche genres? What's your experience here?
Yeah, so when it comes to playlisting and distribution in general, of course you can use, kind of platforms like CD Baby or DistroKid or TuneCore when you can upload your music yourself. But Poland actually has a couple of players. I'm gonna talk about mostly independent players, because major labels, obviously they have their own distribution and they deal with it themselves. So yeah, definitely independent digital, where I used to work. Another one is Agora and Musica. But also bigger players like Believe, especially, and The Orchard have been kind of doing some stuff with artists and with rising artists as well, which I found really, really cool. When it comes to playlisting, I would recommend working with a distributor that kind of has a team. From my experience from independent digital, with a distributor who has a team and who you can kind of talk to, who has relationships with editors, especially that, for example, at Spotify, we have a Polish team that takes care, of Polish music and Polish playlists. So if you have a distributor that has relationships with them, it's, I think it's really, really beneficial for you, and you have a very big chance to get playlisted. If you're an independent artist starting from zero, I think you can try to get on kind of third-party playlists, which are, playlists made from like just normal people or like other tastemakers, which is a little bit, energy consuming and time consuming, but I think there's definitely possibilities there. Obviously, it also depends on the genre, and obviously hip hop players are gonna have it both easier and harder because there's more playlists, but also there's bigger competition. So yeah, I think it all depends from the genre.
And as you mentioned it also, Bartek, maybe we can pull you in. What's the genre that works in Poland? Like you mentioned jazz, you mentioned hip hop, electronics, but you're mostly working with like independent songwriters. What's your experience there? Like you're working in the Live-Market, but you definitely notice what's around the artist. Like, would you say there's an alternative scene in Poland for songwriters, but also like more guitar music?
In general, I would like to say, because I suppose our audience are mostly from Germany or German language countries, that I suppose pretty often the imagination of Polish market is different than reality. And our market really changed for the last decade or even 15 years. It's like totally different world. And I think it's a great market for Germany, especially to join and to try to come, with few reasons. First of all, we have more and more venues, more and more people listen to good music, more and more people come to shows. The sound system in the venues are growing, and it's better and better. And even simple logistic things. If, for example, if you have a band which is based in, let's say, Berlin, and you have to drive to Stuttgart, it will be, I don't have a map with me, but I think it will be closer and easier to get to Poznań in Poland than to Stuttgart, like, you know, in a distance way, in a logistical way. So Poland seems to be like a natural place to go to, if you want to spread your music outside of Germany. I think Poland is the natural direction. The payment here will be definitely lower than in Germany, but if you build your audience step by step, whatever kind of music you're making, because Magda mentioned a few types of music, okay, but in my opinion, it doesn't matter which type of music you mention. If you build it step by step in Poland, then you can get a really nice audience here. We have a few artists who are not even from Germany, but they are based in Germany, and they start growing their careers step by step here in Poland, and it works. And I talk to them a lot, and they say, okay, we earn less money per show in Poland than in Germany, but every time we come back to Poland, step by step, we are the money which we are raising, you know, like we do great things, art and stuff, but it is connected with money. So the money we are earning, it's bigger and bigger every time we come here. So yeah, join Polish market. It's worth, and it's changing. I'm pretty surprised what Magda said about the numbers, because I didn't even realize that our market is so high. That's great. And thing that also that Magda mentioned is, of course, less and less people buy CDs, merch, but still, if you compare Poland to Germany, it's a bigger chance to sell your album after your show in Poland than in Germany, or let's say Holland, or even other Western countries. Again, I'm talking about a bit of money. Money is not the main point. I'm doing my job, but it's always some kind of related. So this is why I mentioned this. I don't remember exactly your question, but that was what was in my mind.
My question was a lot about the different music genre. So you're working with like songwriters, guitar music. We talk about hip hop, electronic music. I have the cliche in mind that a lot of rock or heavy rock bands come from Poland, touring internationally. How is that seen in Poland locally? And
the phenomenon which we have is thing which Marcin mentioned. There's, in my opinion, two types of music, except the shitty disco polo, like city disco, but two important types of music which are totally not in the media, which is metal and hip hop, or like rap. And these guys are, when I'm touring a lot around the country, I talk to promoters in the bigger venues. I said, okay, who sell out your shows here? And he mentioned some hip hop names or metal names. So this music is not in the media, but in my opinion, it's very strong. And Polish market in this kind of music, I think, is also very strong. I have no idea how they would react to German singing hip hop or metal band here. Is not my type of music, but this scene is definitely very strong. And I think each type actually of music, each genre, if I mentioned the word correctly, is growing. It's not like this, let's say songwriters are growing or metal is growing. I think each style is growing. I'm focused on this singer-songwriter stage mostly, and I see it's also growing. There's, as I said before, more and more cafeterias, small venues who wants to hold small concerts for, let's say, 50 to 100 people. There are more musicians in Poland who are doing this kind of music. So really, our market is really, really growing, and I think it's perfect time to join it, even now in pandemia, because this year, like everybody knows, it is strange, and the previous year was also strange. But even though I think it's pretty good time in doing shows, in doing music. Of course, everybody's complaining because it's strange and it's different as it was before. But I think we have like maybe my friends can help me how to say it in English, like nowe rozdanie, like new opening in this all things. And the worst thing is to say, that's my opinion, the worst thing is to sit at home and say like, okay, I'll wait until it will be better times. Fuck, maybe there won't be better times. Now it is what it is, and it's possible to play shows. People, when the gigs were open in Poland on the 29th of May, for the first 2 months, people went to shows as crazy. Like we sold out every I don't know if you can play guitar, Tim, but if you would come and I would announce your show, we will also sell the tickets, because people really wanted to join the gigs and wanted to. That was my impression, but not only my impression. People wanted to help the musicians, and they bought a lot of merch and stuff. After 2 months, the wave went down, but people want music. They learned for the last years how to go about going to concerts, about buying tickets for these concerts and stuff. So yeah, of course now we have new restrictions. Shows will be forbidden or nearly forbidden very soon, but it will be open again, I think, in a few months. So yeah, it's a good time to join Polish market. Thank you.
Thank you. I will come back to more specific live questions to you in a second, but let's go back a little bit to like getting people involved. What's your experience, Magda and Marcin? I know, Marcin, you've also been working with somebody who's collaborating with Berlin people, or you said something about what was your experience to how do the people react? Does that make sense what I'm saying? Or you have been working with somebody from not Poland, right?
Yes, I have a lot of friends around Europe. My physical distributor is in London.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, I was sending the records directly to the shops, including German shops, especially HHV, one of the biggest vinyl record stores based in Berlin. Yes, so I'm also quite optimistic, or very optimistic maybe, as Borowka said. We also met each other in Berlin back in the days. Do you remember that? We were in Berlin Week, something back in the days.
Music Week, maybe. Yeah.
I don't remember properly, being honest. Sorry, but
yeah, but it was like, yeah,
it was a good party, man.
Probably like 8 or 6 years ago, maybe something like that. And for sure, I see that Polish music or even Polish artists have completely maybe they work, so they are completely in a different moment of their careers than they used to be like 10 or more years ago. Because when I was starting going abroad and starting to exporting music, Polish music, it was very hard to convince anybody to check the Polish electronic, for example. Of course, metal was always strong, and that's true. Tim, you are right about it, that we have some bands who are maybe the most important in the heavy metal genre worldwide. But when you are thinking about electronic music or jazz, that was a kind of a gap for a couple of years. And now Polish music became very, how to say, successful, maybe, or getting more successful for sure. And we get a lot of attention. And I also see that all the companies from Western countries are much more open for cooperation with Polish musicians and brands and labels and other parts of the music industry in Poland. And for sure, it was a huge step. Like, just I believe that the last 10 years we learn a lot for sure from other bigger markets, and Polish market is still developing. I also agree with Magda, there is still a lot of room and place for new companies, new cooperation, and and it for sure it will growing, because I think it's a normal thing that the nation is getting more wealthy. The salaries are getting higher. Of course, maybe we have a kind of a small recession now, but you know what I'm talking about. So people have more money to spend for culture, and we feel it. So that's why people are going to concerts. And what is very significant for me, that's like for more or less 10 years ago, all the festivals headliners were international, and now festivals are starting booking with Polish artists, Polish names, and they are bringing the crowd. So that's amazing, because 10 years ago is completely opposite. So it shows that Polish music industry is getting stronger, and our Polish catalog is getting better and better, in my opinion, as well. And so we every year we have a new somebody new who is have kind of a success abroad. So it's very positive for me. And
for the Polish market, that sounds like great news. What's your sense for collaboration also entering Poland for me as
yes, it depends what you are asking for.
So
for the artist, for the label, or
let me ask
for
more specific. Let's say I'm a label, I got a catalog, and I'm interested to find an audience in Poland. Is there enough like infrastructure, a physical distribution? Is that relevant? Is there record stores who are interested, or should I focus mostly on the digital side? What's your sense? Or will the artist just sell the records on the show, on the road?
From my business perspective, because I'm focusing on vinyl records, so that's my cup of tea. So
that's good.
For sure, there are like many new stores with vinyl records. There are maybe we don't have huge companies which are distributing, but there are some couple of brands or companies who are trying to make a chain of distribution in Poland, like Asphalt, which is a hip hop label, but they are starting to make a distribution. Mystic or other, there are some indie companies who are trying to do it, and it's the market's of course getting bigger as everywhere in the world. Of course, I'm saying about the physical. Digital is of course getting bigger and bigger, and Magda already mentioned the main companies. They are like a couple of main players in Poland who are always open for cooperation. So if you are looking for some addresses, it's easy to find them, and they are open for any ideas, I think. And what else? For sure, the physical contact, the personal contact is the best. So visiting festivals in Poland, it's probably the best way to meet the industry. In COVID situation, it's hard to predict what will happen next year, but for sure I will recommend to visit Spring Break in Poznań, which is kind of a showcase festival, but in my opinion, that's the place where all the Polish industry is gathering once a year. What else?
We can also open this like I like that. How can I actually meet the people question? Because digitally, yes, we can try to, like as an industry corporation, we can try to make some introductions, but the people need to meet each other. So it's Spring Break. Where else would you say is something happening? Maybe Magda and Bartek.
I think tak brzmi miasto, the place where we actually met. It's very small, but I think it's definitely a great place because we don't have many we have just one big showcase, which was Spring Break, and probably it was like canceled. It will be back probably next year. And second one is Tak brzmi miasto, which is very small, but you can meet there, I guess around 40-50 people connected with music industry. So it's a good way to start.
Cool.
Yeah, I agree. And also the Music Export Office in Poland was doing a conference in Warsaw, Music Export Conference, something like that. I think it's in the fall. Obviously it didn't happen last year, but I've been there twice and it's also a good place, especially that in Warsaw. A lot of music industry is also in Warsaw, not only because, you know, Krakow and other cities are also big, but the significant amount, from my opinion, is in Warsaw. So I do recommend, you know, if there's no events, just come for a month and just like hang out with people.
Maybe that's also a clever idea these days, to actually give things a bit more time, find a place where you can actually connect with the people. So you've been talking about different cities. What's the key cities in also for touring? You talk about having rather more concerts in also smaller cities, but maybe we can quickly have a list of music industry cities. You said Warsaw, Krakow, Katowice, I guess. What else? Or yeah, just speak. We're
Okay.
like raising hands.
Of course, the easiest way is to point the biggest cities, but the idea of what I'm doing for years is also to join the small towns, and especially if you're not a known band, and with many reasons. First of all, is that if you play and it works totally the same in Germany, I'm sure, because I checked it. If you play in a small town, then you don't have to and you're not a famous band, whatever kind of music you're playing, then you don't have to compete on Friday evening with 10 other acts. So you don't have to compete with them to get your info in the media. So you don't have to print 500 posters to put them on the walls, because it's a small town. So you need 30 posters. There's not many things going on in this town. So maybe the newspapers will write about your show, especially you're coming from other country like Germany. So it's interesting. You don't have to compete with other events on that evening. So people don't have to decide to go to this show or this show. They just come to your show. And the small towns or the medium-sized towns also are very well musically educated. They have internet, they have radio, they have Spotify. People there are also going to festivals, so they are ready to come to your shows. So my idea is to try to join big cities also, but also don't forget about the small towns, especially at the beginning of your road. It totally makes sense. And you ask a question, if you have a label, you would like to sell music. I still think, that's my impression, unless you're not a big famous band, then most of the CDs or vinyls or in general merch, you will sell at your shows, not by some shops, because people don't know you much. So if you're not famous, then just go on tour, play music. If you play good shows, people will buy your CDs. Again, that's an argument. That's a reason to go to smaller towns, because your show might be probably one out of a few in the smaller town per month. So people have money to spend it, or they want to have some kind of memory from the gig. And the best way for the beginners is to sell merch at the concerts. That's my opinion.
Thanks for raising that idea. Talking about, it's not a small town, but it's not the top of my list. Talking about Lodz, Rafał, maybe you're a guest here and not an expert, but I think you're also quite knowledgeable about the music scene, and like also about what I would like to focus on a little bit is what's the key festivals in Poland besides showcase festivals. How can we either play small shows, but maybe we can also play big shows if we're an unknown band in Poland, but have a high profile internationally and just want to put out high quality music out. What would you say? Is there space for those artists?
Definitely, I think it's very nice to hear all the discussion. It's a good start of the day for me to hear you all, and thanks for that. Yeah, I'm based in Lublin, which is the biggest city in the southeast of Poland. It's somewhere between Warsaw and the borders with Ukraine and Belarus. So on one hand, it's medium city for Poland, not as big as the top ones, but still there's a music scene here as well. I'm running a festival called Different Sounds, and for many years we operate with artists from Germany, of course, but on various levels. We had bands like Einstein and Bauten, which are like headliners for us, and we had smaller unknown bands as well, especially last 2 years, because most of our lineup was connected with Polish music stage, of course, but the closest countries, Germany, Czech Republic, Lithuania, that was the countries that it was impossible to bring anybody from the United States, for example, or Africa or whatever. So the closest countries were the place. For example, if band is based in Berlin, that wasn't any problem, even in pandemic times, to just pick a train and come to Lublin. I'm connected with mostly indie alternative music, but each genre that was mentioned here, hip hop, folk, metal, guitar music, punk rock, jazz, avant-garde, we are trying to do a little bit of everything. Of course, we are not so huge, like, for example, Off Festival. They have 80, 90, sometimes 100 bands during 3 days. We have like 25 during 4 days. But yeah, I think Germany is a huge music market. Poland is getting, maybe we are not close to this market, but we are like Magda said, we are definitely the biggest in this area. The country is big. The cities are offering some possibilities. And also I agree with Bartek, because there are a lot of the trend was really good before the pandemic in smaller cities, in smaller venues. People starting to join live music, and it was growing. Of course, it stopped quite a lot, like everywhere else, because of the pandemic. But let's hope it will run again. But yeah, there are quite good chances here for German bands as well. Especially we discovered that because of the transportation. Like last 2 years, it was the easiest country probably to book the bands from. So, and
Cool.
last thing, like now I agree with Marcin. Direct personal contacts are always the key. You know, if you know more and more people, then even if you are touring, traveling through the country, from one phone call to another, you can quite easily book a show. From in my town, as I can see, I think most of the concerts are done by public institutions, or like half public institutions. There are not so many private venues, but this situation is also changing. So maybe they will appear some.
Thank you. Let's do some name dropping. You mentioned Oft Festival. I know Tauranova Musica as well. What else is there with a
sound? If you look at electronic music or avant-garde music, of course there is one big major like outer arts agency. They're operating Open Air, Orange, and Live in Krakow. But there you can compare Open Air to other huge major festivals in Europe.
But name dropping for smaller festivals. What?
I think it depends what kind of music you're looking for.
Okay.
Because in every major city there is a jazz festival, for example. So you just pick the city and they will have at least one jazz festival. So same in other genres. So folk ethnic stage is strong in Poland. If you are playing kind of like ethnic music, you will find some partners for that. Electronics are growing, up to date, Unsound, Tauron, Audio River, smaller ones. I would have to think for a moment, but I think pretty much everyone from here, Bartek, Marcin, Magda, would have some ideas as well.
Maybe we can do a quick email brainstorm afterwards, so we can collect some of that and put it together. Maybe you also want to add some either cities that are important or festivals that you have in your mind, Bartek.
You mentioned Łódź. I'm in Łódź at the moment, and it's third biggest Polish city. But on the other side, and I think all the bookers confirm this, when we are planning tours and we have big cities on the road, Łódź is always the worst selling city. It is difficult and it's poorer than the other big cities in Poland. It's an interesting city to live for sure, because it's changing a lot, but this is not the main city which I would mention as a great market. If you would like to play gigs in big cities because of some reason, I would mention Wrocław, Poznań, Trójmiasto, which is like a triple city in the north next to the sea, whereas Gdynia, Gdańsk, Sopot, like three cities stick to each other. So this would be my third point. Fourth point would be Kraków, and fifth point probably Silesia, which is Katowice and cities around. I would mention these five. Not even Warsaw, because as I said, like in Warsaw, there's many things always going on. So unless you're not really popular, you have to compete with other events. The conditions of playing shows are usually worse in Warsaw for the bands. I mean, the deal with the venues is worse than in other cities. Yeah, that would be my goal. And after seeing this on the map, you can see that West and I would say Southwest Poland is more jak jest rozwinięty po angielsku? Niech mi ktoś pomoże.
Developed.
Yeah, so West and South is, let's say, grew more than the East Poland. Sorry, Rafał, I know I love coming to East Poland, but that's how it is. Like, there's less cities. There are only 3 big cities in the East Poland, so West part is more is like richer and more, let's say, cultural educated. That's kind of a tip for German artists or bookers to know.
Because it's very close. Yeah, you can agree. What did you say?
It's also closer from Germany to Poznań, Wrocław, which is like the distance is shorter. You can combine the tour, like Poland, Germany tour, Poland, Germany, Czech Republic, for example, tour in one slot. And Eastern Poland there's a larger distance to these cities. But yeah, I feel like that sometimes, that like Lublin is like the only island on the eastern part, maybe Białystok a little bit as well. But still, I think one thing, for example, for this part of Poland, or basically Poland, you can have like at least 2 operators here. When you are touring the venues, private sector, which is really poor in Lublin, you can struggle with fee, with good conditions of equipment, sound system, sound engineers, hotels. But if some German bands can connect to, let's say, public institutions or some kind of more professional institutions or NGOs or things like that, the conditions can, because some of these operators are donated from the city or from the municipality or whatever, they can spend more money for the so it's always sometimes for some bands it's good to look as well for this direction. Then
yeah, I think that I agree, Bartek. Maybe you can talk from the practical side on that.
Of course, what Rafał said is it's true. but my idea is not just to base on public places and like houses of culture. Of course, if you have, if I'm organizing a tour for, let's say, German artists or bands, and we play in a public place, then we get more money than if we play in a private place. But trust me, it will be really difficult to organize a, let's say, 5-day tour, especially in big cities, and be focused on public places like houses of cultures. I would say it's nearly impossible. So I think private places, the equipment there, the way how they do shows is better and better, and it's professional, I can say. Also, so I wouldn't be focused on just on public places, because it won't work that way. Of course, it's great to have them on tour, and this help is always the financial way makes sense. But being focused just on this won't work.
That's totally clear. I would love to jump a little bit out of the live market and also open the round into with some people who joined us, Peter from Details and Guara from Piranha/Vomex. I have you in my head. Just one more question to Marcin. How is the independent label world in general? Is there a lot? Who's running those? And like you once said, they nearly had more market share than the majors at some point. So there must be quite a few.
Yeah, there was a very interesting story with indie labels in Poland, because there was a moment in time there were almost earning more than half of the market, but streaming helps majors, as everywhere, of course, because of the huge catalogs. Now majors are getting stronger and stronger, but indie labels are still very strong in Poland.
Do you have a few names maybe? Like, yes, or is there some indie label association? How are they organized? And how is because I know we got details here, how is their administration working for you? Is there any like a lot of Excel sheets, or what's your current situation? Do you know more about that?
So there is one main organization for the labels or producers, as they know. So it's SPAV, ZPAV, and this is a collecting society for the labels also as well. And they are also organizers of the main award in Poland, which is called Fryderyki, which is quite interesting. Yeah, but it's a different story, but there is such a thing in Poland as well. And when it comes to indies, there is a new organization which is allying indie labels. I'm not working with them. It's also a different story, but you can find them easily. They are connected to Independent Digital, which Magda mentioned, which is also a physical digital distributor here. But the condition of Polish indie labels is very good, and there was a moment when hip hop became the #1 in Poland, and most of the hip hop music is released by the indie labels. Most of them are run by the artists themselves, and when you're asking about the physical sales in Poland and CDs, thanks to hip hop, it's still very strong, but only hip hop is selling big numbers in that moment. Maybe some pop artists from time to time, but thanks to the hip hop community, CDs are still strong in Poland. When it comes to other genres like rock, and there are also, in every genre there is a indie label which or couple of labels which working very good. And when you see the sales, most of the records from Poland are Polish artists are released by the indie labels. which is of course good from my perspective. What can you say? Yeah, this is Polish market is very huge. That's the thing that everybody should know, and all the genres have kind of each genre is for me a bit different word, and I think the good example of that is a jazz scene in Poland, because already I think Bartek mentioned that there is almost in every city there is a kind of a festival, or for sure almost in every even small city there is a small jazz club or cafe where a jazz band could visit them and tour a lot in Poland. But to get to this jazz world is not easy, because it used to be a music for the kind of older people in Poland, but now we have a completely new generation of jazz musicians, which are sometimes more famous abroad than in Poland, and jazz bands become more visible in biggest festivals, and they are sometimes the headliners of the festivals, which is completely new for probably everybody now, because 10 years ago nobody was interested in jazz around young people. Now it's something very something which is getting more attention, and which I'm also happy about, because it's a very good quality music. So yes, basically all genres have their own circle of life in Poland. So different festivals, different venues, different how can I say, blogs, or maybe the side of the internet is also something interesting in my opinion, because somehow we don't have any influential places in the internet, on the web, and when you are thinking about, for example, sending album to review to somebody, or thinking about some tastemakers in Poland, there are only just a few journalists which are worth mentioning, but it's we have a lack of good influential press, especially in the web, and in that moment probably there is no newspapers with the music or focus on music, which is a pity, but yeah, that's the strange times we are living in. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, especially with no media outlet specifically for music online. It might be tricky, but I think so it's directly through live, directly to the customer, and on the ground building a real audience that we need.
Of course, there are small portals for specific genres, but they are not huge taste makers for the whole music market, in my opinion. But maybe somebody would say something from their perspective. I'm happy to find the new things, but that's the biggest problem for me as a label owner, to promote the music, to find the proper journalists or proper place to promote it in Poland. That's somehow we didn't manage to have this for the last years, and there was some projects which are now down. So it's a pity. For me, it's a problem, of course, and of course for somebody from abroad it could be a problem as well. It's not, because there is no specific place to find new releases, or new reviews or whatever.
I would love to include Peter and Gaura to the conversation. Maybe you want to introduce yourself quickly, and then also ask a question towards them. I will be back in 1 minute.
Sure. All right. Yes, Peter, go for it, and then I go for it. Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry for attending late with my video, but due to construction work, I had a very slow internet, which seems to be okay now. So, hello. Yeah, I'm working for Details, which is B2B platform that is including modules for labels, label services, and booking. And most of our customers working with our royalty accounting software. With that, you can managing contracts and all royalty accounting. You can import statements, and yeah, you can in one go, if everything is set up, you can in one go calculate all statements for the artist if you have imported the sales statements from your distributors before. So it's a very helping software in our opinion, and I'm attending here to hear about the Polish situation of the labels, and I like to see where we as a company can contact those labels, where we can meet them. If there are organizations we can get in contact with to see if there's any need for our software, and that's why I am here attending this.
So maybe I can answer your question, because I run a label here in Poland. So there's one organization, Collecting Society, which I mentioned in the previous section. So it's SPAV, ZPAV, and this is a organization where you can find all the labels which are collecting money in the Polish market, because it's collective society. And I think that's the first contact to get, and it depends on how you want to establish the cooperation you will go on with this organization. But for sure, this is one of those where the most of the record labels are involved. There is a new alliance of independent labels, but I have to find maybe I will send to Tim after our session the link. So this is a kind of a indie labels and producers association, and they are, I think, linked to Impala in that moment. I don't know if you're working with Impala, but that's a strong connection to the other parts of the world. But I don't know any other society with the labels, so it's quite hard to get all of them. And because I think that SPAV, which I mentioned at the beginning, that's the first. Tim already sent a link to this second society, which is Indie Society, on the chat. So yeah, basically that's the idea, to get how to get them, but it's tricky, of course. It's not as easy as probably in the other markets.
Thank you. And do you think it would be a good idea to attend festivals like Spring Break to get in contact with labels, or is it more artist-related festival?
I think the Spring Break is the very good example of the showcase where whole industry is gathering. So not only artists and managers, but other persons from the whole industry, because it's the biggest one, probably the oldest showcase festival in Poland. But it's also tricky because the organizers changed the name, or maybe Live Nation bought the company who was running the Spring Break before. So it's not obvious that they will be again after the pandemic. And if not, we don't have a great place to find whole the industry in one place, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay.
Bartek?
Yeah, the thing about Spring Break is that, as far as I know, it will be next year. The name will change of the festival, because it was bought, as Marcin mentioned, by Live Nation, and Live Nation don't give a shit about it anymore. Probably it's not a big business enough for them, and but the city of Poznań wants to make a showcase, and they had some meetings already with some venues, and they are planning to make it next summer. We talked with a guy who will be kind of responsible for this at Tak Brzmi Miasto, at the showcase in Kraków, and he said this is the plan, that they are trying to make it, and they did some first steps to make it, probably at some different name because they don't have a rights to this name. But you know, it's definitely worth to go there, because I don't think it will change a lot. Like, you have a list of all delegates, so you can always ask someone from Polish market, okay, man, I have a label and I'm looking for this kind of people. Can you show me, can you point me who is good to meet? As we said, our market is growing and growing, but more or less we all know each other. People who work in this music business, like labels, bookers, PR guys and stuff. Somehow this is not a big group of people. So if you ask someone to help you, to give you some tips, okay, this guy is responsible for this, or it's worth to meet this guy because of something, then it shouldn't be difficult to get in touch and had a meeting with them at a thing like spring break, or in general to get contact, like email to these people.
Perfect. Thank you. Gaurav, maybe you want to jump in.
Hi. Sorry, I'm late. I was on my way to work, but I joined. I wanted to make sure I come and say hi. My name is Gaurav. I work with Piranha Arts, Womex in Berlin. Piranha Arts is the head company, and Womex is one of the brands. Womex is, I don't know how many people know. Actually, I'm just curious to know, does anyone know about it? Tim, I would expect you because of Berlin, but yeah, okay. Yeah, so Womex is actually also better like a showcase festival, but more focused on music from around the world. And we are more Europe, actually we are more global, but we happen within Europe in a different country every year. We travel from city to country. We were lucky enough to happen in Porto this year, in Portugal, and next year is going to be in Lisbon. And it was so we had a showcase B2B professionals festival, or an event, or an expo, conference, films, and of course music. And thankfully this year we managed, even through the pandemic, around 2,600 delegates, which was quite an impressive number actually. And not just an impressive number, it kind of said that people want to meet and people want to interact in person. People want to connect again, you know, I mean, so I basically head press, media and communications for Womex, and based out of Berlin. For me, I mean, this session was really exciting. I mean, I honestly, like, we work very closely with Adam Mickiewicz Institute, if I'm saying it right. They are, of course, a part of Womex for many years actually. And every year we get a decent amount of delegates from Poland. But I think it was Rafael or Marcin who said that the Polish media is a bit weak and they don't cover music much. Culture is not high as much as there is so much culture and music and art in Poland, and so like really exciting. And I don't see that happening in many other countries, honestly. Like, I mean, I love Berlin. I've been here for 8 years, but I see a lot more experimental stuff happening in Poland, and a lot of musicians, artists in all art and culture, they're doing so much exciting stuff. And yeah, and I wish that there was more media focus or media. I mean, I follow Unsound Festival very regularly, and off as well, but Unsound, their lineup, I mean, they're getting better. I think they're getting more and more international now, I feel, Unsound in the past few years. But I wish there was, yeah, I wish there was more media talking about Polish artists and the Polish music scene.
Yeah.
It's so close. It's literally in the heart of Europe, and it has so much more to offer. And I think, yeah, maybe this would be a reason to start. Maybe it's like someone you would know who can start music blog or a music news website, and hopefully cling on from it. Yeah. So for me, it was just a moment to come and say hi and meet people and see what's going on and hear from first-hand Polish friends what the scene is.
Thanks for joining, Gaurav.
Pleasure.
Marcin, please come back.
Thanks for this good words about Poland, and it's very nice to hear that. There is also one thing which wasn't mentioned at all, but political situation in Poland is also a bit, how to say, infect the musical scene as well. You mentioned Adam Mickiewicz Institute. It's connected with politics a bit, and I used to cooperate with them a lot. Now I don't have any connections with them no more somehow. But this is also the indie labels or this experimental scene have almost none of support from the government in Poland. Maybe it's not a 100% political thing, but it's a bit connected, and that's why there is no promotion of the indie music in the how to say, public press or public radios. That's a bit problematic, and but on the other hand, we do a lot on ourselves, and as Gaurav mentioned, this experimental part of and those indie artists have a lot of place to play and publicity around them. So I think we are in a good way to be kind of a capital of indie in this part of the Europe, and I believe we are getting stronger year by year. So yeah, thanks for the good words, and see you around.
I think another interesting thing what I see of Poland is a lot of people do feel the same in Poland in a way, like people who work in art, music, and culture. And for us, Adam Mickiewicz is more of a Polish music export than an institute, actually. They are the ones who bring in Polish artists to WOMEX or journalists or radio journalists. And so they do it actively, and which is also very, very nice, because if they were not doing it, I don't know who else would be doing it. So I also feel that at least they are doing some, and I know of course they could do more, I'm sure about it, and there are others also who could. And I think what I do like about Poland is that everyone feels the same, that there could be more. And I think this is a very interesting like a way to understand that everyone feels is equal in this, and then it can only get better from here, because I think this would make a change, or this could bring a change actually, and I hope it does.
There is, as we're talking about institutions, there is also as far as I know, a new association which is running Polish Music Days, trying to bring big Polish people together. I was on a panel with one of the initiators. Do you know that? Have you been a part of it?
Tell me more, please. Or if anyone knows more of organizations I could reach out to.
Yeah, it's like starting and growing. It's trying to bring the big radio people together. I need to find the name. Give me a second.
Sure, take your time. Or if anyone else has any suggestions from the Polish market who we could reach out to. I had heard of Spring Break, and I don't think I've ever attended, but I think I would be keen if it happens next year.
Yes, unfortunately, we don't have kind of industry festivals, which I can recommend. And Tim mentioned in the chat Music Expo Poland. That's a kind of a new organization, which was probably they started work 2 or 3 years ago, but it's focusing on professionals from the industry, which is also maybe an idea for PETA to get to know them, because they are organizing the trade missions mainly, and not only, or maybe not for the artists, but only for professionals. So that's the kind of a different approach for the music industry. So, and I was attending to 2 of those trade missions, so I can recommend this organization. But they had a lot of support in the beginning from the Ministry of Culture, but now they are, of course, they don't have it. So we'll see what will happen next year, because nobody knows what will happen next year. But anyway, it's also, if you are looking for some organization or bigger parties, that's also a good address. Music Expo Poland.
And I'm trying to build and also connect with the people of Polish Music Day, Anna Senova, who was working for the Ministry of Culture before, to see whether there is some border crossing possibility to include, like, to actually maybe have one session of people from Germany or Berlin. Like, just to connect. It's not the idea of them, they want to connect the Polish people more these days, but I think to have that in mind already is nice. Let's wrap things up soon. Maybe because we want to give a quick overview over things. One thing we did not mention yet is publishing. Like, Music Export is also finding a sub-publisher in Poland. Music Export means also finding, making sure that all the copyright is collected also within foreign countries. Maybe, Magda, do you know more about that side as well? Or?
Yeah, I don't really know that much about publishing, but I did want to mention something else, if that's okay.
Yeah, maybe somebody else can jump on that question afterwards. Thank you.
Okay. Or maybe we can just jump on the publishing question. I don't wanna,
If somebody has some experience with the publishing, also maybe one of you running a label is also running their own publishing to get extra income. That's how it's done in Germany quite a lot.
Yeah, I can say something about publishing. It's also tricky in Poland, because we don't have a lot of publishers or companies here. Of course, the collective societies are working well, but you have to contact them, and sometimes it would be easier through your collective society. So GEMA in Germany, right? We have a ZAIX, and which is the biggest one. But anyway, the collective societies are working properly in Poland. And as far as I know, all of them have kind of a contact centers for somebody from abroad, because they are like huge organization. But concerning the publishing, we don't have too many companies, and I think that's still a field in music industry, Polish music industry, which is not as professional as it's supposed to be. I don't have for example, exclusive deal with any precise company in Poland. I'm working from project to project with different small brands, so it's not easy. That's why in the beginning I said it's a bit tricky, but collective society is the first point you have to check, especially ZAIX, and probably they have much more knowledge about other companies, because all the companies should cooperate with ZAIX as well. So
I just checked. It seems like within Poland there was a little bit of a conflict between ZAIX and publishers, but it looks like it's slowly changing. Bartek?
I have a bit different opinion than Marcin about ZAIX. I mean, it is changing in a good way, but until a few years ago, it worked like mafia in Poland. What I mean, like, and it still is this way somehow. Like, there are no clear rules. For example, if Marcin is organizing a concert with Rafael, and Rafael have to pay 10% of the salary to ZAIX. Okay, this is fair. And then the money which comes to the band, like the royalties, I think this is the word in English, is like some percentage of the money that Rafał paid, but nobody knows what is the percentage, how big is the percentage. The money disappeared, and I try to avoid these guys as much as possible. Also as a booker, and also as a guy who represents artists, we get some money from them, but we have no fucking clue why we have, let's say, 500 zloty and not 600 zloty. We don't know. Is this money from playing music in the radio, or it's money from the concert? Like once per few months, I think once per 4 months, we have some money come to our account. They try to change their, let's say, image, PR. They try to work better, but I still think this is not a company. If I compare it to Gemma, and which I had experience also, like your German ZAIX, then I think the level is like this. Like it's really different. It doesn't work that clear and that professional as I would expect it. But there's no other possibility than them in Poland. That's the problem, and it is kind of monopole. Maybe Magda and Marcin can agree or disagree, but I think this is like kind of.
I agree. Yes, it's true. Of course, that's why I said it's very tricky. I don't want to say about a lot of bad words about it, but I'm not as involved in ZAIX as you, Bartek. I'm more in SPAF, so for the labels. Okay. So that's why I didn't say so many details, but yeah, it's true that there's so many unclear things about ZAIX, and probably
it's a question of transparency that I've heard a lot about.
That's the biggest problem.
Other countries, but that might also be something where music publishers could help to understand royalty statements and stuff. That's a development where there's more opportunities, I'd say, as if you like, maybe, yeah.
But
I think also, sorry, yeah, go on.
Just one last sentence. If, for example, you're a German band and you are signed with Gemma, then and you play concerts in Poland, or your music was played in radio in Poland, then ZAIX, this Polish, let's say, partner of Gemma, will try to get your loyalties here. How much will you get out of it? Why this amount of money? We don't know, but they do this work, and I know because we have bands from Germany, as I said, and we book them here. So Gemma was trying, and especially they try to get the money from the public places because they have budget for it. So yeah, it works, but it doesn't work properly. Sorry, Magda.
Sometimes.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've heard the same thing from a lot of my artist friends. I just wanted to say, yeah, lack of transparency is the problem number one, but we also don't really have many resources for artists, for people who are starting off labels that could help them to understand what's going on. That's number one. And then ZAIX is not really helping with that. It's not providing that either. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that we're lacking. I feel like in Poland we're lacking a lot of like educational resources when it comes to music business.
I just want to add, I had a situation, maybe it's not a warning, but because like everybody said, it's slowly getting better. But I had situations, for example, that ZAIX chased me for the money, for the royalties, for the bands that performed at my festival. And I knew directly from the band and their band agencies that they are not signed for Gemma, for example, or any other, like in Finland, Norway, any royalties, but still ZAIX, and ZAIX told me the band wants their money. I have a band statement that they are not signing with you. So
the same situation is in Germany, because it's assumed that every artist is signed with a copyright collective society, and you have to prove them wrong. That's not easy. I know that trouble, especially for very small venues, but in general, I am pro royalty payments towards them. That's just the system, how it should work for authors. Magda, you wanted to add something besides publishing, and maybe otherwise afterwards we can wrap things up as we're.
Yeah, I don't want to take too much of your time, but I just wanted to mention. Yeah, because I feel like we have spoken about, personal contact and the live music, and all of those are like very, very important ways in Poland to kind of, import or to connect. But I feel like there's two ways that are more digital that I see that are growing a lot, and there's a lot of like room to grow. And the first one is the short video forms. So, TikTok, and recently we launched Instagram Reels. And I feel we have a lot of people in Poland use it. That obviously it's a younger audience and it's not gonna work for every single type of music. But I definitely see a lot of room for collaboration with, influencers, with trends, with kind of getting music on the viral side and then building it up from there. And then another one is that we have a pretty big video game industry. I mean, we have, this developer who does The Witcher and the Cyberpunk something. And yeah, I'm not really that into that, but I know, we have a big kind of video game situation, and music and video games are, are very, very connected. And I feel like this is another room to kind of explore when it comes to promoting music that a lot of people don't think about, but it could potentially work.
I think the digital conversation is a much more global conversation, but it's great to know that also there's a very young audience within Poland adapting to the new media. From my side, I would wrap things up here. I want to thank you, Magda, Marcin, and Bartek a lot for joining us as experts. I will send you an email, so we might just do some little blog with the common knowledge from all of us. And I'm very happy that you could make it, Gaurav and Peta. I will introduce you to each other, so you've got each other's contacts, if that's okay. And then I will hopefully see you next year in real time. Maybe I will come to Poland again if spring break's on, or something like that. We got Most Wanted Music in November, usually in Berlin. Or maybe some of you will come to Womex, let's see, in Lisbon. Happy to connect you with each other, and yeah, let's stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.